Last year we did north of 1.1 million in annuity premiums for retirement, and in this video we're going to be looking at a case where Jim, the husband, is 55 years old, about 7 years out from retirement, and is wondering if he should buy an annuity for himself and his wife, Catherine. It's not black and white across the board, so we're going to walk through their situation and then show how they can come to a clear-cut answer. Let's get into it. Let's start with breaking down their current net worth. So we can see here about $712,000. However, that includes the home, $300,000 property value. They got about $50,000 left on the home, about 5 years left on that mortgage, and then they'll have that paid off. They are not planning to sell the home, though. They are planning to live in it in retirement, so we're not really going to include that. Now, in their investment accounts, they have 4. 2 of them are old accounts. These are the 2 they are considering an annuity on. So an old 401k for both Jim and Catherine, it's summing here to $192,000. And then currently, and we'll see this in a minute, they are still both contributing, or Jim is still contributing to 2 accounts. So his 401k here, he's getting a match on that. And then his IRA, he's putting in $6,000 a year, and they've got a little bit left in savings. So Jim is 55, his wife is a year younger than him, 54, and they're planning to retire, like I said, 7 years from today. So that's 62 for Jim and 61 for Catherine at the same time there. Their monthly expenses that they're expecting are $2,300 a month. This would, of course, be more expensive, factoring in inflation 7 years from today. The software we're using will factor that in, and then it does not include this $2,300 here, their annual retirement health costs, or any sort of vacations, anything additional they want to do like that. So we put in $2,500 a year if they're wanting to take a trip a year. That would also continue to adjust for inflation. This also doesn't factor in their property tax, insurance, maintenance costs, and long-term care costs. But we are going to be factoring, again, all of those in with the software. The key kind of idea here is understanding their cost of living. So first, we wanted to understand what's going on with their net worth. Next, let's understand their cost of living. And third, we're going to understand how much of that cost of living is already guaranteed. Because if we're going to use an annuity for income, this is a fantastic starting point to have that conversation. So here is where their retirement income is coming from as of now without the annuity. So this is their current salary. So this actually would not be coming in retirement. That's just what they have now. That would be X'd out, and then they would begin getting Social Security. They're planning to take it right at 62, right when they retire. So right away for Jim, and then once Catherine 1 year later turns 62, she'll be able to take it, and then they currently have a pension paying $21,600 per year, and that is going to inflate each year 3.2%, accounting for inflation. And these are the contributions he is going to continue to make in the next 7 years, so 8% to his 401k as a match there, and $6,000 a year to the Roth. Currently, if all of those expenses and everything are accurate, this is what it's looking like without the annuities. You can see on the right there, the probability of success is 100% according to the software. Now that's rounded. Keep in mind the market, of course, could technically go to 0 tomorrow. However, very close to 100% is what we're seeing in terms of probability of success with no annuity. And the reason is, you can see here, this first year, before the Social Security, the second Social Security even kicks in, they already aren't needing to take any additional from their investment accounts, because this covers their entire cost of living, the pension plus just Jim's Social Security. Then they add in Catherine's Social Security, and still they're above what they need. Here, of course, they're going to have to start taking out for required minimum distributions. And even if they had a flat 0% return throughout this entire 30-year period, roughly, still, it's not until the very end, 1 year of long-term care costs, where they're missing some income. So 0% return across this 30-plus year period, very, very, very unlikely. So the main point in looking at this kind of situation is income is almost entirely guaranteed already, and it's covering all of the expenses they listed. So why exactly would they be adding more income? This is one of those cases where, yes, they would be guaranteeing more income for life if they were to defer an annuity out 7 years, for example, and then turn that on, and they'd have that for the rest of their life, guaranteed. No matter what, it's there. It's not going to be in the stock market. They don't need to worry about if the stock market goes up, down, sideways. However, what are they using this income for? So let's look at a case even if they did add in an annuity. But the point being, if they already have that baseline guaranteed, all they're doing is guaranteeing an additional amount of money above the actual expenses that they need, which most of the time isn't going to make that much sense. But if we added in an annuity, so they put in both of those old ones, so the $192,000, deferred them out 7 years, and then turned them on for guaranteed income for life, jointly, meaning even if Jim passes away, Catherine's still going to receive the full amount, and vice versa, that would be $19.5 thousand roughly. That's not going to adjust for inflation each and every year, but it will continue into perpetuity. Now, as we'd expect here, the probability of success doesn't change that much. It drops slightly, but you can see just that little green dot there, that's the annuity, continuing to pay out for the rest of their life. And again, the only reason they're taking this orange amount here, that's their savings withdrawal, is because of required minimum distributions. They don't actually need that money. They just have to take it out by law. So now they have more income guaranteed for the rest of their life. But the main question is, what are they going to do with this additional income? Because if they were going to just spend it, then maybe it could make sense to have part of this as an annuity. However, that's what we could have just accounted for before when we were looking at the retirement goals. Instead of having those expenses at $2,300 a month, maybe we're bumping that up to $4,000 a month. And then from there, we can look at, all right, well, does it make sense to add in an annuity in this case? Now, if the baseline is above what they're currently getting with Social Security and a pension, then at least using annuity as an income stream can start to enter the picture as a reasonable route that this couple could take. If it is above the baseline already in terms of how much guaranteed income they're receiving, getting more guaranteed income might not make that much sense. Now, there are going to be a couple cases. So let's look at what are they doing with the additional income. Again, if they're spending it, then let's just increase those retirement goals in terms of expenses from $2,300 up to whatever amount they want that to be and start again. Again, if the baseline is below that, then you can consider an income annuity. Now, if they're going to, which is probably what I imagine would be happening since the other money they were planning on keeping in the market, reinvest it, then why buy the annuity in the first place? If they're going to keep the same income, so they're going to buy it, they're going to start receiving that income from the income annuity. However, their cost of living and everything that they're spending money on is already covered by the pension and Social Security, then they're just going to put it back in the market. Why buy the income annuity in the first place? It kind of begs the question. And I think when this happens, it's generally because people like the idea of guaranteed income. They love their pensions. They love that they're going to get Social Security and that those are going to continue to inflate for the rest of their life. So of course, they think if I can get more, why wouldn't I? They might think, yeah, I might not spend it all, but at least it's guaranteed and it's coming in. And worst case, if I don't, I can go ahead and reinvest it. Great. But if you had the option to just not take that in the form of an annuity in the first place and already have it invested because you already have your baseline expenses taken care of and you could pull from the investment account or whatever with the additional as you need more income, then it might not make much sense to go that income annuity route. Now, there are annuities, however, where you don't have to actually start taking income from it. You never actually have to annuitize or turn on any sort of guaranteed lifetime withdrawal benefit rider to start receiving funds and spending that as you wish. There are what are called fixed index annuities that are structured for growth. And this could be an alternative for this money if and only if they are just going to take this money that would have been coming from the income annuity and yes, we're going to reinvest it. However, we're not going to reinvest it in the market because we don't want to lose it. We're just going to put it in some sort of safe area. So like a CD, a high yield savings, treasury bonds, for example. They're just wanting to put this money in a place where it is going to grow because they're probably just going to want to pass it on to heirs. However, they don't want to deal with any sort of market volatility. They want guarantees, they want safety, they want peace of mind with this money. If that's the case, then you could consider a fixed index annuity for growth, but not to turn into an income stream. Of course, you have that option there if you wish to do that, but the main reason that you would be doing this is because with a fixed indexed annuity, you are linking to the market. You're not actually in the market. More or less what that means is it's like you are investing in an index with a floor and a cap. That's not actually what's happening, but it's kind of like it. And what I mean by that is, let's say you were linked to the S&P 500 with a 0% floor and an 8% cap. Well, what that means is if the S&P 500 loses money, minus 10, 20, 30, 40%, then you hit your floor of 0%. You don't lose a dime because the market went down. You get a 0% return that year. Now, if the S&P 500 gained 20% in a given year, you have a cap of 8%, so you can't go above that cap. You would just get the 8% credited to your account. You locked that in, and now next year, if the market goes down, you locked in your gains from last year, you have that, and that's how it's going to continue to grow for the rest of your life. So it's a safer option for growing your money, kind of similar to those CDs and high yield savings. You participate when the market goes up. You don't lose a dime when the market goes down because of that. If that's what they're wanting to do, realize, again, that they are probably, in the long run, not guaranteed, but of course, very, very likely to outperform this if they had just kept the money in the stock market. However, in this case, when the market goes down, they're going to avoid those lost years. The money is going to steadily grow over time. So there you have it. Should a 55-year-old buy an annuity? In this case, it's difficult to find many situations where they should, unless, of course, in a couple of those scenarios we listed there at the end, we just wanted to understand their net worth, then understand what their cost of living is going to be, and finally, how much of that cost of living is already guaranteed. From there, we can have the conversation if they want to guarantee more, to guarantee their entire baseline income that they need. And otherwise, that only other scenario is if they aren't planning to use it for income, but they're wanting to use a sort of fixed index annuity just for safer growth and keeping money in the stock market, even though it's much less likely to perform as well as the stock market. Now, I want to point out this video was very oversimplified to get the point across in how you can determine if a 55-year-old should buy an annuity. But of course, what happens if they take Social Security much later and defer that out? What if they bought some sort of 6 to 8 year period certain annuity? Maybe in that case, that's another way to guarantee while they are delaying their Social Security out. What if their long-term care costs are expected to be much greater than we looked at? What if both of them want to look at long-term care insurance and that's going to bump up their premiums? What if one of them is fine with not having any long-term care insurance and is fine with, once one of them passes, they're going to move in with one of their children and have them alleviate some of those costs? There's plenty more reasons I could go on, but hopefully this video is helpful. If you did find it to be so, please do subscribe. I release videos twice a week going into great detail on all things retirement, primarily for U.S. residents within 10 years of retirement that are looking for safety, peace of mind, guarantees, and don't really want to deal with the stock market. If that's you, subscribe, and I will see you in a future video. Bye-bye.